5th, 2009, the day before the 65th anniversary of the Normandy landings, the liberation of Europe, Operation Overlord. I was here before, in the fall of 1992, but the feeling then was nothing like it is now. There are many people here, and the atmosphere is slightly somber. The event about to be commemorated is on everyone's mind. People here because they want to be. It's important to them, and it's important to me. I've always been interested in World War II. It is the war of my parents' generation, and they both participated. Here in the cemetery on what was Omaha Beach, Bloody Omaha they called it, there are buried 9,387 American military dead. I look out over the rows and rows of neat white headstones and see the silent young men that are forever here as a reminder of events past, a reminder of the huge cost of war. Here, we looked out towards the sea where the landing craft came in those many years ago. Our vantage point is from a German bunker. Looking up the cliffs, imagine the savage gunfire as you rushed off the landing craft onto the wide open beach with only the obstacles placed by the Germans to hide behind. Although the beaches are clear and the bunkers abandoned, the history is recent and the memories of the survivors are still vivid and fresh. For June 6th, my wife and I had signed up with the company for a semi-private tour of Omaha and Utah beaches. There were only 5 in our group. Our guide was a French school teacher who was a real World War II enthusiast. He knew where to go and he knew all the stories to make it a most memorable day. We started our tour in the German cemetery. He used a large map there to give us our bearings, then went into the cemetery. Many graves were decorated with flowers, and upon examination, the flowers were from Germans, French, British, and Americans. I was amazed. He then took us to the grave of Hauptmann Michael Wittmann, a very successful tank commander. He was responsible for the death of many British soldiers, but he and his crew were all killed on August 8th, just 2 months after the invasion. It was here that I asked our guide what he thought about the current state of affairs with Germany and what the French thought about their neighbor. He hesitated for a moment and then said, "In the past century, France was invaded twice by Germany. They caused a lot of death and destruction. It is all behind us now. Look, here in this cemetery right now, there are young German soldiers in uniform who also celebrate D-Day and the defeat of the Nazi regime." Next, we go to Sainte-Mère-Église in the Utah Beach Zone where the airborne troops landed during the night in advance of the main invasion. If you saw the movie The Longest Day, you know that a paratrooper played by Red Buttons hung by his parachute from the church steeple. Well, it appears they never took his parachute down. All the tourists expect to see it, and here it is. There are many reminders of what happened here in 1944, not just the parachute on the church steeple. Place names, bullet holes, and one thing I think may last the longest, new stained glass windows in the church. I expect that in 1,000 years these windows will still be here in silent testimony to the men and events of June 6, 1944. The atmosphere in Sainte-Mère-Église is much more festive. Military bands are playing, many are dressed in period clothing, mostly U.S. Army but not all, and there are numerous military vehicles restored to better than new condition. And of course there is the Airborne Museum here too. Today they are having a ceremony giving medals, and kisses from young girls, to the survivors of the battle. It's all done in French, but there is no doubt about what's going on. Near the Airborne Museum, there are a great many restored military vehicles. There was also an encampment where numerous tents were set up and many men dressed in World War II uniforms were milling around. Not reenactors, but just guys that had collected many of the artifacts of war and were displaying them for all to see and enjoy. Pointe du Hoc. From this position, the German artillery could fire on both the Utah and Omaha Beach areas. This was a priority target and was heavily bombed in the months leading up to the invasion. The 2nd Ranger Battalion had to tack up the 100-foot cliffs in order to find and silence the German artillery on the heights. After gaining the heights, they discovered that the guns had been moved inland, but they still found and destroyed them. The gun emplacements are still there. Bomb craters and broken concrete litter the landscape, and there are still German soldiers entombed in these bunkers. Arromaches is a beautiful town on the Normandy coast. Here, the British installed one of 2 temporary mulberry harbors, the remains of which are still visible today. During Reunion Week, there are also quite a few shops selling surplus military equipment. Everything from hats to helmets, something for everyone. As we drove south from the beach area, we entered the hedgerow country, or bocage as the French call it. You can see what a problem it was for the attackers to clear out the defending German troops. The high earthen embankments provided protection and camouflage, and left the attackers having to maneuver in the open. We spent 5 days in the region and explored the entire invasion landing area. Our base was at Chateau Vouilly, dating from 1750. It was here that the American Press Corps set up their headquarters after D-Day and stayed from June 10th to August 10th. The current owner's mother was hostess to the likes of Robert Capra, Ernest Hemingway, Walter Cronkite, Ernie Pyle, Andy Rooney, and many others. In the dining room they have a small museum in honor of their previous guests. It was a great place to stay and very conveniently located just about 10 kilometers south of the coast. If you are interested in Operation Overlord, spend some time exploring the invasion beaches. From Utah Beach on the west to Omaha, Gold, Juneau, and Sword on the east, there are numerous museums and monuments to explore. Try to visit during one of the anniversaries. Best dates are divisible by 5, such as the 75th in 2019. In 2009, I looked for activities on the internet during the anniversary week and found an 18-page list. You won't be disappointed. I hope you enjoyed this presentation of our visit. I wanted to keep it brief, but could have put in another 1,000 pictures.